I'll be doing the, hopefully, third and final test on this green DSi LL. I'll first grab my digital records for it based on the shell serial number. I think this is the only green one I have assembled. I have a green Japanese and a green PAL region. But yeah, that matches up. So let me check my notes here. Chip on the touchscreen. I think I know what that means. I'm gonna have to look. No known issues. Okay. So what I first need to do is take it apart and actually confirm the motherboard matches my records. And I can also check this. Sleep and image retention, it passed. I'm gonna run that again because I did sort of discover new information regarding that, or just sort of more I won't bother. There's a chip on the upper right of the digitizer. Okay, I think I remember what that is. It's just like a little chunk out of the glass digitizer, which isn't part of the usable area. Had trouble reading R4 at first. Maybe SD card was not fully seated. That just might be an R4 problem. I didn't need to take the stylus out. Oh, I forgot I was going to magnetize that. 1 second. Hopefully this works a little better. I know I've magnetized it once before. I never really understood how the magnetizing works. Alright, cool. One of those things you learn something new every day. So in this case, I do want to take out the motherboard because I want to inspect that digitizer one more time, just to see if I'm still sort of okay with the chip on it. I'm going to go a little deeper than I usually do. And I mean, I wouldn't have a problem replacing it if I think it's bad enough, but right now, I'm going to see if I can avoid that. Because this is an OEM digitizer, and I would rather keep it as such, if I can. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't see anything. I must have misremembered what I was remembering. I don't see... I thought it was like one of the corners had a chip out of it. But unless I'm completely blind, I don't see anything I would call a chip. Let me confirm the motherboard. No, because this was part of my notes and not my motherboard. I need to figure out what I meant. Because the me of my past is usually not too far off. Okay. Let me really just give this thing a look over again. There's nothing on this digitizer I would qualify as a chip. It's perfectly square from what I can tell. Looks like there's like a very small spot of rust right there, but it's more or less benign. Nothing I would consider a chip. I wonder what I meant. I left that note in a way that would imply that it would be very obvious. Did I replace it? I would have noted if I replaced it. Chip on upper right of digitizer. Oh, so this is a clue. So now what do I consider upper right? So it sits in the console like this. If I were to open the console normally, the digitizer would be looking like this. The chip should be up here. But if I meant this way, it would be up here. It would be either of these two top corners. I don't see anything resembling a chip. That is really weird. Why did I leave that note then? Am I sure I'm looking at the right one and I'm not? LL. My motherboard's matched. Yeah, Japanese. Huh, I'm going crazy. The corners are square. I don't see anything resembling a chip. I don't know exactly what my notes were implying. I'd rather not peel up the digitizer to look at it from the back. But I really kind of want to find out where this alleged chip is. Like I see there's a gap in my adhesive that I put. It's not the biggest deal. Like I don't see any cracks, any... I think I have to peel up this digitizer to see what's underneath. See if I can find wherever this chip is. Very carefully pry it up with my fingernail. I don't like doing this if I don't have to, but I don't want to be stuck with this question. I don't see anything. I don't know what I mean. I just make sure I got no dust flew in there while I was inspecting it. bit of the film coming up. Okay, I'm just gonna replace this. So what ended up happening is there's this like really light film on the bottom of these digitizers and it started peeling up. Might be a little hard to see, it kind of bubbled up there in the corner. That and the worry about the chip would have like really eaten me alive because I have no idea what I meant, but I have no idea what I meant. I don't see anything. Let me take up this adhesive. Was it a part of the frame, not the digitizer? Like I'm going insane looking for government agents inside my touchscreen or something. The man is watching me. Gotta look for the cameras. I have no idea what I meant. Oh well, the screen did have light scratches on it. Not to the degree I would be worried about, but... oh well. I've made the decision. I'll just go ahead and replace it. Which means it will have to go through another round of testing. It is a new digitizer, I'm not worried about it, so... I'll just do a normal round of testing here. Just to make sure that all the components are still sort of in line with everything that I'm okay with. They should. I'm just thinking the best way to do this, I need to get this console away so I don't flick rubbing alcohol on that screen. Try and keep that screen as clean as I can. I used my own double-sided tape on this, and it's much stronger than what Nintendo uses. For better or worse. Which means doing a swap like this can be rather difficult. It usually means I can reuse the adhesive because it's still good and it's not caked in junk. Or maybe the stuff that Nintendo uses did work well when this thing released. Well, we're talking like 20 years at this point, so... alright. So I still don't know what I meant about the digitizer being chipped, but matters not anymore. I can just throw that right there. Let me correct those notes and just say that I'm replacing it. Thankfully, digitizers are pretty cheap. And aside from them being a little different in that they have a weird kind of texture to them that more or less mandates a screen protector for them to be usable, I think they've worked really well for me. Alright, so let me first... question mark, I have no idea what I meant, but I'll just put replaced. Yeah, that's really odd for my note to leave me astray like that. But I don't think I would have felt good letting a console like that go out into the wild, knowing that there's something wrong with the digitizer, some physical imperfection that very well could get worse over time. But okay, now here's the fun part. Trying to get this thing on without dust or debris underneath it. So I need to kind of clear off my space. I need just work room here. Looks like the screen is relatively... There's just a little bit of a smudge right there, it looked like. I'm just trying to get off. There is a spot right here. I don't think that's... Hopefully that's not damage to the LCD, but shouldn't be visible. Puffer. Okay, I gotta remember how this thing... Okay, so it goes like this. Contacts are on the bottom. Okay, it took both pieces of adhesive with it. Okay. Feels like brain surgery. Okay, I think that's good. Okay, I think that went on very well. I don't see any particulates underneath it. So now I gotta get the bezel back on. Now with brand new touchscreens, I haven't had a problem with them. I'm going to assume they work just fine, but I do want to just put it through at least 2 rounds of testing. For the bezel, since it already has adhesive on it, I'm just going to pop it in. I'm just going to make sure I'm still nice and aligned here. Not really, but I can sort of... Should be able to manhandle it a little. Actually, I need to repaste this. I need to make it flush with the bottom. Thankfully, the adhesive they use on these aftermarkets are sufficient, but not like super glue. Oh, of course, when I do that, a little piece of dust or a little hair whisks under there. Love it. And the trick that I've found is try to get it level with the bottom of the frame. Okay, looks good. I need to curl the contacts around so I don't get it pinched. And then sort of drop it in the frame as squarely as I can. And press it down. It should be nice and seated in there. Right, without contorting the top screen too much. My Wi-Fi ribbon cable. Why do I never have a plastic pry tool when I need it? Here it is. Even when I have a dedicated desk for this workspace, I need shelves. I'll get a few screws in just to get everything stabilized, and then I'll want to rub off all the ribbon cables, get any hand oil off of them, especially this new digitizer ribbon. My little bottle cap, squirt some rubbing alcohol in there. Not really doing anything too special, just rubbing them off. Giggity. The new tweezers are a lot more blunt than I expected. Definitely good for some applications, but definitely making this a little more difficult. Okay, the new digitizer ribbon is going to be a little bit of a pain because I'll have to curl it around. And I've always kind of noticed that the new digitizer ribbon is always a little off by just a little bit. It doesn't perfectly align with the latch. Now, that's a little too consistent for me to be blaming my ability to line up a new digitizer. I think this is just how they come out of the factory, just a little bit off. They twist right into place, but you're gonna have to twist it as almost like a corkscrew. Well, maybe not like that, but kind of like a corkscrew doesn't form a circle. You kind of have to offset it a little. And since I need to bend it for the first time, it likes to fight. But with enough encouragement, it'll eventually go in. Just like that. Yeah, so these new ones will kind of have to just shove in like that. It doesn't really look that great, but it does work. I say that and then this one won't work for some reason, but I'm fairly confident. Grab a slurp of coffee. I'm not going to worry too much about the shoulder buttons. When I go to take this thing apart to confirm the motherboard for a final test, I'll wipe them off. If I remember, or if I'm feeling it that day. And then before I go actually stitching this thing together, I'll make sure the darn thing turns on. Voila! I didn't break it. And the touchscreen seems to work. Off to a good start. So let me get all of the screws back in. Then I can do a proper test round on it. Make sure the shells are married. Sometimes the shoulder buttons will catch on the shell, so you have to press them down and they'll pop back into place. And then of course there's a row of clips on the bottom of the console right below the serial number. Alright, so let me see what we got here. I know the camera is kind of picking it up when I have this light on, but it looks like the top screen's a little more red than the bottom screen. So I just need to note that placed. I think there's a little bit of yellowing on the top of this bottom screen. Doesn't seem like it's all that much. What I am noticing specifically, though, this was a problem I've seen popped up on Reddit that I don't think I've ever noticed, but the bottom screen is misaligned. How there's more black of the side LCD displaying on this side than there is on this side. It's like shifted over. Huh. So, my best guess on that was because... Well, actually, I don't know, because I didn't think that was actually possible. And I don't think it's something I've ever noticed, but ever since it's been pointed out, I've been kind of curious about it. The only thing I can think of, because I did sort of put in that digitizer and hopefully I thought it was right, but maybe not. But maybe it was a little more off than I expected. Because I thought these bottom screens kind of keyed in very tightly, but now it's worth kind of probing into to seeing like what is actually going on. Like, did I just put in that digitizer poorly, or... Oh boy, here I go, taking all this apart again. I think this is an important question to answer. I've never noticed it, so I don't think I ever would have, like, pinned it as a problem, but it's definitely something I notice now, and apparently it bothers some people. But I am curious as to why. I'm guessing it's just because of just the digitizer install is kind of done by hand. So it should be, I would hope it would be pretty obvious once I guess there is a little bit of play. Not that great, but there is a little bit of motion. And the idea is that It's shifted a little too much this way. Yeah, I see it on the bezel, so it's going to be really hard to make out, but there's a little bit of overhang on the bezel on this side, but not on this side. So I think the bezel, when I put it in a little sideways, perhaps. Because I don't detect any variance in the digitizer itself. I think it's just the bezel. Let's see if I can... Ooh, boy. Okay. See if I can take this off without having to douse it in rubbing alcohol. It might surrender, but hopefully... I don't like doing this by hand, but I think because I did unstick it and re-stick it, it's lost a little bit of its tackiness. Because when I use my double-sided tape, it's on there real good. And no, I don't recommend doing this by hand because you easily... These bezels are very brittle and will snap in half. Well, I can't say they're super brittle, but they will snap in half. But this is a very unorthodox situation where I've taken off the OEM adhesive and replaced it with my own. Okay, so now... So the idea is to put it as squarely as I can onto here so that the bezel doesn't offset the screen. Like that, I think. That's the way I normally did it. I did it a little differently the last time I put it in, but... So let me get a bare minimum going, and then I'll turn it on. Well, not so much bare minimum, but just sort of back together, just in case I need to take it back apart. I'm not going to plug in the digitizer. I might have to reset those Wi-Fi antenna cable again. It doesn't really sit well in that channel. Okay, that's enough to at least power on. That's interesting. It's not really sitting in there very well. Okay, there it goes. Like, it looks like it's shifted up maybe just to the top right a little. Huh. This makes me wonder if I need to make like a jig for installing digitizers and frames, or bezels. Something that's a little more like concrete. I don't know if I'll be able to do that out of recycled parts because it's going to have that same tolerance. I'd almost have to like 3D print something, I think. This Wi-Fi antenna cable. I've noticed that sometimes they don't really sit in their channels very well. Either maybe because the pinching force of the shell isn't as good, it's not grabbing onto the antenna. Maybe I don't have enough, maybe I'm off by a few millimeters on how I'm feeding this, so the curls of it isn't quite right. Probably use just a little bit of Kapton tape to hold it down, just enough so it doesn't bind up in the shell. That might be enough without it interfering with the shell's ability to clamp shut. Just needed that little bit of help. Yeah, it's still got this lip on the side. Try it one more time. Thankfully, these pieces don't really need much adhesive, so I'm not really worried about wearing it out like this. Okay. I'm just trying to think of a way to do this that would produce sort of the perfect result. Either I try dropping it in square, but again, I was really under the impression that this would be unfallible, really. Like, I think my digitizer's in there square. Like, other than me just, like, dropping it perfectly down, which that's asking for failure. Let's try that. And I think there might just have to be a point to where I just get it close enough. Just say it's not that egregious. And I really can't speak for everybody. If I never noticed it after the couple years I've been doing this, then it obviously never bothered me. I mean, it's still... It still wants to shift that way for some reason, but... I mean, I think that might just be as close as I can get. Because I did try that 3 times. Alright, so let's actually get on with the testing. It's a curious thing that I guess bothers some people. But it seems to be more in line with how the bezel sits on the console. Because I'm under the impression that the touchscreen and the digitizer are sitting there pretty solid. I want to wipe these cables off again. No, don't you get pinched under there. Okie dokie. So for the testing, I'll try and go through this kind of quickly. I have just this little column of tests right here that I use. I guess I'll just keep it in my lap. First one is motherboard, power board. Basically, does the console turn on? Does it open an application? I usually use settings, which it does. I want to do the image retention test one more time while I kind of get everything gathered here, which I think I have everything. I have my SD card, I have my R4. I don't think I loaded up that R4 with testing software. I have all my games here. So for I call it unceremoniously the image retention test, and what I'm looking for is whether or not the screens display any signs of image retention. That takes the form literally as image retention. It almost is reminiscent of like OLED burn-in, even though these are LCD displays. Just the way I think my best theory is because these screens are just old and just starting to fail. That image retention is one of the major failing points. That vignetting as well is another failure point, or like failure sign. And this test tries to catch that. So it's just basically sitting on this screen for 2 or so minutes, nothing really super scientific, and then going to the DSI settings menu and seeing if I can see any of these elements. Like I think the last image retained screen I saw, you could make out this entire text box, especially the DSI on the top of the top screen. Sometimes you can make out the boxes, which, to my best understanding, those are early signs of failure. So I just swap them out. I think it's been a minute or so. I'll give it another 20 seconds. Okay, so let me swap over to DSI settings menu and see if I can see anything. Okay, I don't see anything. So what I would be looking for is the checkered pattern, the text, like I said, was on top, or the big buttons on the bottom screen. Now you will notice that there's shading on the left side of these buttons. I think that's normal. I've seen that on every console. But if it was image retained, you would see those giant buttons. And of course that checkered pattern is what I'm specifically looking for. And then I'm gonna do this, do soft resets to see if I can make out any elements. Now the way this screen kind of blooms from the center out, I'm not going to make any bold claims right now, especially since I don't see any elements of the DSI settings menu, so I'm saying both these screens are good. But the way that's blooming could be a very early sign that it's just old. But I think the last one I saw that was blooming like that, you could also see elements of the DSI settings menu fairly clearly, which was a good sign that, or possibly a good sign that it's failing. I use a lot of uncertain terms because I don't know myself. But this is sort of the best assumption I have based on numerous different, just anecdotal tests I've been doing. So that passed. I don't notice anything wrong, so I won't worry about it. So now we go to tactile buttons, which slot in my R4 card. Tactile buttons will be exactly as it sounds. We'll be testing all of the inputs. I wonder where my fat stylus ended up. Oh, here it is. Okay, I'll need that in a bit. Now, I want to be careful with this touchscreen because it's brand new. And whatever texture they use for these touchscreens isn't really friendly to styluses. So I'll press these buttons a handful of times. Then I'll pay extra close attention to the shoulder buttons as they tend to have the most problems. I don't know if it's just because of their switch design or maybe because they're so close to the outer portion of the shell without really much protection. They're a little more susceptible to damage, or because they're on the corner of the console, they take direct impact damage. If you were to drop the console and it hits the shoulder button, it's really hard to say. I don't think I've ever had one with snapped solder joints. It's usually because the inner contacts are just corroded away for whatever reason. That's good. I don't detect any problems there. Next is touchscreen, which I never ran a calibration on. Oh, I'm not going to be able to navigate the Japanese menu, so I'm just going to do the shortcut. So let me, like I said, I do kind of want to protect this screen, so I'm going to kind of do a less than ideal screen test here. Oh, it's just loving my fingerprints, apparently. Okay. So when I do this touchscreen test, I'll do it through a microfiber cloth just to keep it. And I'll do a much better test when I actually put a screen protector on it. But I'm under the assumption that this is a brand new touchscreen. If it doesn't show anything obvious, then I'm just going to assume that it works just fine. Okay, so I just drew around the border. It looks like, yeah, because of how I had to do that. Oh no, it's just because I'm going through a microfiber cloth. It's not going to... I don't really know where I am drawing. Ignore my musings. Okay, looks like it's responding on all of the sort of major quadrants. I'm basically looking for if there's any big dead zones on the corners, or if there's any erratic inputs, which, again, it's a new digitizer, it better work, and it looks like it does. I don't want to molest it too much, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Next is speakerphone, microphone, and headphone jack. I'm going to pop my R4 out and pop my SD card in. Basically what I'm going to be looking for is, do both speakers work? Does the headphone jack work? Does the microphone work? And I popped an SD card in there, so it also serves as a good SD card test to make sure that slot's working. La 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 la! Yep. And then volume buttons, which I wasn't able to test in the tactile button tester area, but you can tell they're responding just fine. The SD card, it's reading it right there. I have a piece of music loaded up. I'll listen to both speakers, plug in my headphones, and listen to both channels. Neat. And then that also tells me that the SD card slot works. It's able to recognize the card and read a piece of content off of it. I don't do any write cycles to it, but I have to assume that if it has no problems reading the SD card and reading content off of it, it'll have no problem writing to it. I don't think I've ever seen a problem of people having where they can't write to an SD card. Next is cameras. Nothing really too fancy, just to make sure both display an image and there's no weirdness about them. Colors are as I expect. There's no artifacting of any type. Charge port. Okay. Grab my little USB charge tester right here. Let it boot up. So what I'm going to do is just plug it in from the back while it's still open. So I'm kind of doing this blind here. Orange light comes on. The software indicator is telling me it's charging. It is pulling 0.5 amps. Close the console, and then what I'll do is jiggle the charge port around, or the charge end. There's a little bit of play, especially if it's an older port. But what I'm looking for is if that orange light ever turns off. Which it doesn't. That tells me that the solder joints are good on the motherboard. Because if it were to sort of flick off and then on again, or off, and then you have to kind of wiggle it into a certain position for it to turn back on, that's a strong indicator that either the charge port is busted or the solder joints on the board are cracked. Next is game card slot. What will justify my giant pile of game cards right here. So I'm just going to kind of rattle through these and sort of explain it as I go. So I'll be doing kind of a bunch of weird things. So I put the game card in normally, seeing if the game comes up. Then what I'll do is put my fingers on them and shift them from side to side. There's a tiny bit of play in the game card slot. And then what I'll do is just slowly push on them all the way while sort of wiggling from them from side to side to see if I can make those game cards disappear. The entire point of it is to try and get these game cards to disconnect just for a millisecond. Which so far every time they've been disconnecting is because I eject them. And then, of course, after I'm done pushing on them and jiggling them sort of back and forth through the game card slot, I'll smack the console against my open palm to see if the game card will disconnect, and, well, see if the console will just flat out shut off because there's an issue with the battery. because the console should be able to withstand some amount of impact and still work just fine. It is a portable console after all. So far, this console is performing very well. Alright, went through my stack of 20 perfectly. I detected no problems. I did have a note about R4 card. I usually don't test my R4 cards because they're non-commercial retail cards. Their dimensions can vary greatly. I can't account for every R4 card. I'm not gonna go out and buy 20 of them. But I have a few that I can try. I know I have another one coming, but this is not a test I usually perform because if your R4 card's having problems, well, it might not be the game card slot. Like, there's not much play in this R4 card. Like, there's no side-to-side movement. But it looks like it's reading it just fine. So my R4, that one works. DS Pico should pop up. There's a little bit of play in the DS Pico. A little bit of side-to-side movement. But it seems to be reading it just fine. Ooh, it does not sound good going into the game card slot. I don't know what that's about. I don't know if it's like the micro SD card slot rubbing. I don't know. Oh yeah, and my Ace card I needed to modify a little. So it's gonna get stuck. Alright, yeah. So this console passed flying colors, really. got through test 4, or it got through test 3 of 4. I just need to put the 4th one there. So, had trouble reading R4 card. I'm just gonna scribble that out. I couldn't repeat that test. Chip on upper digi. I'm just gonna cross that out. I'm just gonna check sleep and image retention again for test 3. Yeah, and that's about it. So I'll let this console chill. Come at it again, and with the new digitizer, it should be in very good shape. I think the only real major problem I have with this console is the screens are a little different, but again, that's sort of one of those arguments on if it doesn't bother you, you'll never notice it, but if it bothers you, that will be the only thing you can see. So that is definitely a very subjective thing. One of the one of my least favorite parts about dealing with these consoles is, yeah, good old LCD displays showing different or having different calibration values. Anyway, that'll be it for this.